Hi, I'm Virginia, and welcome to the Health Creators Podcast, where we talk about the impact and business of being a health creator. Here with me today is Dr. Brooke. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me on and for asking me.
Fantastic. So, who are you and what do you do?
So, my name's Brooke. I am an obstetrics and gynecology doctor. I work in the NHS, training and working in London. And I also am a mum. I've got 3 kids. And in my loads of spare time, I create content as well. So I mainly started with creating content on Instagram and a blog when I basically just realized when I was pregnant, actually, for the first time, that I had this privileged access to a lot of information about pregnancy and birth, and kind of like whenever I had a question in my mind, I was able to answer it or from my own experience, or I could ask someone at work, and I had this kind of privileged access. And I realized all my other friends who were pregnant as well kept asking me these questions, and there has to be a way of answering some of these questions that people have all the time naturally when you're trying to get pregnant, when you are pregnant, without them necessarily having to book a GP appointment, a midwife appointment, to ask these questions that kind of, they're not life threatening, but they're things you're interested to know. So that's when I kind of started creating content about 6 years ago now, 6 years ago now. Started with blog and Instagram, and then moved over to also like TikTok and YouTube and places like that. I always feel like I kind of don't ever know what I'm doing fully with it, because it's shifting the whole time, and especially when you're trying to fit it in around work and family life and everything else. But yeah, that's kind of what I spend my time doing.
Brilliant. So, you mentioned that you had privilege to access a lot of information, so from people around you, and that was kind of one of your motivations to start creating health education videos. So, was there anything else that really urged you to do that? Because you've got a lot of responsibilities as a doctor and as a full-time mom. So what else kind of keeps you going? Because you've been doing it for a number of years now.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first started, I didn't really know why I was starting it. I just kind of recognized. I was thinking about how to share information. This was like in the early, not the early days of Instagram, but it was before Instagram became video. So it was all very static posts, and I was like, why do I want to share anything, and how can I do it? Because I never wanted to put myself front and center. It wasn't about what I was wearing or what I was eating, and that was the time when Instagram was full of mainly food pictures or like outfit pictures or people's holidays. And I was like, how am I going to share information that I think should reach people in a way without kind of, yeah. And it took me a while to find that voice, and I didn't really know. I didn't tell anyone. I just made an Instagram account. I found some people in America. There were some doctors that were creating health kind of information, educational information. So I was like, okay, that's how they're doing it. There's no one in the UK that I can find that's doing what I'm doing. I just made an account, didn't tell anyone, just started kind of posting. And I think the why came to me more the more I did it. The more I did it, the more I realized. And it was probably, I don't know, I probably had the feedback more when I was newer to it and it was smaller, that when people told me, a post that completely changed their life or changed their pregnancy, or, I realized very quickly that I was, if a post, at the beginning, even had, let's say, 1,000 followers, and it would be seen by 200 people, um, then I realized I was still having more of an impact in a day on 200 people than I could in a full day of clinic in the NHS, where, even if you were working flat out, you might see 40 patients, and that would be a really hard day. And you could potentially, so you're kind of the scale of it, and then the way that you're able to impact on people is much bigger and much quicker. So I kind of just found that I was enjoying that, and enjoying the fact that I was translating information, and people were receiving it on the other end. And I think another thing that, again, another why I realized very quickly was I was having to stay up to date. I was being challenged in a way that sometimes, work gets comfortable. You get comfortable with what you do. Of course, like for anyone else, labour ward's a scary place to be. But for a labour ward registrar, labour ward's quite a comfortable place to be. And although there's some emergencies, you kind of manage the same 6 emergencies on a regular basis. And it kind of feels like within your comfort zone. And then suddenly someone asks you, on social media, these questions, or challenges you, or says, where did you get that information from? What's the reference for that? And you go, okay, well, actually, you're right. Let me go back to the guidelines. Maybe the guidelines have changed since I last looked at it. And you kind of stay much more up to date, because before I put any post out, I have to cross-check myself. I have to check the latest guidelines, the latest evidence. I try when again, everyone's kind of takes time to find their own voice. my voice is not someone who is challenging other creators too much, and I'm not usually kind of trying to bring the newest studies to people's attention, because there's enough to do within women's health of just breaking down the kind of the basics and the standard, and kind of making sure that everyone else is on the level playing field of like, this is what a period is, this is what your menstrual cycle is, before we even get to the realms of like cutting edge endometriosis care or something. But even still, you just still got to stay all the time up to date and be aware that things change. And so I found that being on social media again really helped me to stay kind of live. And I enjoyed my day job more when I was doing content creating than before, even though obviously I suddenly had more things to do and my evenings were busier and my weekends were busier, and I was like, why have I filled my life up with another thing? But actually, even when I went to work, I enjoyed it more because the work was sparking these like, oh, actually, I should tell people about this. Or, you know, if someone asks me a question, I'm like, great, this would make a great post. And it kind of just, gave everything a bit more purpose.
Interesting. So I really find it quite interesting that you just did it and didn't tell anyone. And when people started finding out, how did that feel?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I still remember to this day. I think it was at my baby shower that like my cousin or someone outed me, because I think there's something that sometimes the iPhone can do those like weird things, or the phones can do that weird thing where they suggest you people that you might want to follow. So even though I like didn't link it to any of my email addresses, somehow it knew like my cousins or whoever, so it suggested me, and then they were like, they outed me, and they're like, you've been doing an Instagram account that you've not told us all about. And I was like bright red. I was just embarrassed. Same with at work. It took longer before it was found at work, but when people started seeing it at work and asking me about it again, I was just like, I didn't, because especially even 5-6 years ago, people were not au fait with people just like creating content online. It's like, why do you want to be famous? Why do you want to be like an influencer? Do you even care about your job? That's how I felt that it came across to people, like that you think you're better than everyone else, that you're kind of got a platform and an audience, especially if you're at a junior level in the NHS. It isn't always, or I was worried it wouldn't be very well received. Like, who am I to start, doing this and talking about this stuff? So I think, yeah, I definitely felt embarrassment that I shouldn't have probably felt, but I felt embarrassment. I felt the need to hide it initially. But again, with time and you get more comfortable, and I was seeing the benefits of what I was doing, and I was realizing that I drew my own boundaries. I drew my own red lines. I kind of made this framework for myself of what I will and won't do on social media. And I found it very hard to find any kind of framework that is out there. So I was like, well, I think this will be better respected by the people who I trust and I respect if I stick within the current guidelines, if I stick within only the current evidence. I don't ever speak outside of my realms of expertise. I don't try and tread onto any other speciality. I stick very closely within my framework. And again, things move and they shift. At the start, I used to share quite a lot of like mum life, my personal life. I felt like that added a personal dimension to it. But again, as time went on, I started to share less and less of myself. I didn't love the fact that, if my colleagues at work would see I'd been on a holiday, or I was talking about some product that I'd been sent. Sometimes it just felt like, well, these worlds don't sit next to each other. And I feel like people that aren't health content creators probably don't have that same dynamic to try to balance. Whereas if you're kind of working in healthcare and you're balancing this, there is more to consider and to think about. So I would say that my reaction probably, maybe it's different now, although I still feel a bit, when someone talks to me about my Instagram or any of my social media channels, I kind of don't really know. I try to figure out where they're going with it, with their line of questioning. Is it because they've seen it and they think it's helpful, or is it because they're trying to find out like why I'm doing it, or things like that? So I try to figure out why they're asking me about it, but I am obviously prouder of it, and I can say why I'm doing it in a more confident way.
Amazing. I think it's so good that you built a framework for yourself to decide early on, what's good and what's not good to share, especially when it comes to your personal life, because I think it can be really easy to think, oh, all I've got to share is what I do with my kids or my work and things like that. But there's so much more to you because you have all of that expertise and it's all around you. And it's great that you're excited, and it makes you more kind of helps you embrace what you do more at work, and that gives you those ideas.
And I also think the kind of the role, like even the concept of like a health content creator as a defined category didn't exist before. And
Mm.
so when we were doing this stuff, you kind of felt like you had to do what everyone else is doing, because if you're trying to build an audience, you're trying to reach more people, you need to build a following, you need to get more followers. How do you get more followers? Well, everyone else who's getting more followers is on stories and they're sharing this and they're that, and you kind of get carried along with this. And then obviously you realize, you do need to pick up people if you want to reach people, if you want to build a platform. But there are ways of doing that without necessarily being at every event or being like, I think, I think that it has changed as a world, since certainly I've been doing it. But I've learned that some of that stuff doesn't matter. But
Mm.
at the beginning, you kind of felt like you have to do everything.
Amazing. So, what is your process to create health videos, and how do you manage your health videos across several different social media platforms?
So I'm currently on maternity leave, which I should say because I'm on maternity leave with my third child. And I guess my ability to create content is, I wouldn't say it's easier now, but it's different than it is when I'm at work. So my process is slightly different. Although part of what I'm doing at the moment, because I'm coming into my last sort of 2 months or 6 weeks of maternity leave, is trying to streamline my process so that when I'm back at work, it's even easier. So yeah, my process generally at the moment is I script all the videos for myself. I also basically streamline how much I repurpose content. Ultimately, I reduce how much I put out and I repurpose it as much as possible. So I essentially have two categories: shorts and longs. The shorts go everywhere, so they go to obviously YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels. I even post them now on Twitter and on where else? Facebook, the Facebook page as well. So the shorts go everywhere, and then the longs tend to just be for YouTube. As just YouTube longs. So my process is I script it. I tend to try and find one day, one evening during the week to script everything in one go. I make two separate. I'm kind of spelling it out because it's now become this it's so defined that I do it the same basically every week, because I have like a little home studio which I already have set up so that I can have the easiest process possible. So it's got lights and it's got a teleprompter, and it's got there's an old iPad that I had that goes with the teleprompter, like a really old one. It doesn't even run any of the current whatever Netflix and things like that. The only thing it can do is basically act as the teleprompter app and Google Docs. And so I write everything in Google Docs. I have a script for a long and a script for about 3 or 4 shorts. And then when I get a chance, I go out and I bulk film. I literally sit next to the camera. I have the scrub top. So I have like only the scrub top, put that on, open up the teleprompter, literally record in about, well, probably 45 minutes. I'll do a long and 3 shorts, or maybe a long and 4 shorts. And that's usually the end of that session. I've been interrupted by somebody by that point. And then I edit shorts myself. And again, I try to do that on a different day, because I can't. If I had like an entire day, I would like to just dedicate to that. That'd be easier, but I can't. At the moment, I'm fitting around naps and things. But then I edit the shorts myself, and I edit the long video just in terms of chopping out the ums, the ahs, that anytime I have to re-record something. So I basically get that down to just the actual, me speaking in one straight 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever it is, and then I send that to an editor. I've got an editor just for my long videos, for YouTube. So I do one of those a week, and the rest I do 3 or 4 shorts. I edit them myself, and then I upload them to a platform which allows me to repurpose the content, post it in multiple places, and also amend so it's called Social Pilot is the one I use. I actually really love it because you can basically take the same video and put it on all the platforms, and then slightly amend the caption, the cover, whatever you want to amend on that platform, and you can then schedule it. So that's what I tend to do. I'll just schedule them all, and then they all go out over the next couple of days. But the other part of my process, which I think is probably the most important process now, is I've realized none of it matters. None of it matters, because sometimes life gets in the way, and when you feel the overwhelm and when you feel like you're struggling, there's literally no point in making content. Because, if you go a month, 2 months without posting, no one will notice. Nothing really bad will happen. And when you add that to your plate, when your plate is already full, everything feels like a struggle. So yeah, it's great when I'm in a phase where it's easy to fit these things around life, then I can do it. And then when there's been some change and everything gets upset for a bit, you've just got to take a break, and it really doesn't matter at all. And I think, I think that's probably the most important thing out of the whole process.
So, talking about impact, what impacts or kind of lovely messages have you received about your health videos so far and helping people?
Yeah, I mean, I went through a stage where I actually do try to save all the lovely messages. But I think one time I even uploaded it to my e-portfolio for the doctors out there, because you know what, sometimes people question why you're doing it, especially when you're still in training and you have to prove yourself. And so by saving the kind of random messages that you receive every now and again, and uploading them to a portfolio, I could be like, well, this does have a purpose. So yeah, I mean, there's it's funny also, because you could probably, if you asked me like the meanest message I received, I could probably recite that for you. But you ask someone what the good messages are that they've received, I'd be like, I can't really think of any right now. But that's human nature, isn't it? But yeah, I definitely have been told, people that picked up on other certain conditions because of it, people that even picked up on like cancers because of my kind of health, raising awareness of the kind of cancer symptoms and things like that. So I've even had people come up to me when they've seen me in person and recognize me and just be like, I felt like you were with me throughout my pregnancy. And I'm like, I'm really glad that it felt like that for you. I find it quite hard on my pages actually to alter, like, I know you've spoken about Virginia before, but like thinking about the pillars of content. And so my pillars, which just basically covering everything in women's health, is like things like pregnancy, birth, postpartum, breastfeeding, but it also covers fertility, miscarriage, and pregnancy loss. And I find it difficult sometimes to know how to balance between my pillars, because they kind of are at odds with each other. If you're following me because you want to learn about, fertility, or you've suffered from recurrent miscarriage, you don't really want to hear all about the, top tips for a healthy pregnancy, and you might unfollow and things like that. So when someone says that they've, felt that sometimes people have said that they felt I was with them throughout the whole journey, that's like my aim. I'm like, I'm really glad that you kind of maybe came because you're trying to get pregnant, and then you later got pregnant and stayed with. So yeah, those kind of things make me realize that, yeah, it's worth doing, it's worth to keep going, and kind of to keep alternating between those pillars as well, because I think if I don't cover all of those areas, I'm not being true to the things that interest me anyway. But also because someone never knows what they need to know. So, like, for example, again, another pillar would be menopause. Well, most of my followers, who are probably between the ages of like 18 and 30, would be like, well, why do I need to know about menopause? Like, I'll follow that one. Like, I follow someone to do with menopause when I need it. Well, actually, if your mum's going through it, your auntie's going through it, you might go through an early menopause and not expect it. I think it's actually really helpful to have that information, to people who don't think that they need it.
Yeah, I love that, because I think people don't know what they need to know until they need to know it. And then by then it feels more scary because you haven't been kind of drip fed your kind of content where you're trying to cover as much as possible of the women's health journey, which is, very complex. And it's one of the things that is getting a lot more attention now, because I think women's health uh, does require that level of need and attention, and it's great to get that from an expert like you. So I would only encourage you to continue. And you don't need to stick to any specific number of pillars, and life is a journey in itself, and as long as it keeps you interested in creating it and helping people, then I think that's really important as well, because it keeps you motivated to keep going.
Yeah.
So what are your top tips for health creators who want to get started?
I guess my first tip is always just do it, because you might think, and I've heard this kind of argument from people before, being like, well, there's loads of dermatologists on there if you're a dermatologist, or there's loads of, whatever, that speciality out there, but there's no one who is you. And I think that the comparison is not your friend, because this is a friendly area that actually everyone should just be supporting each other, especially in the kind of health create a community. And definitely, you know, that's all I've ever experienced. It's been kind of support and encouragement from each other. But I think when you're on the outside, you haven't yet started, then the fear is always, yeah, but someone will think, what, you know, why am I doing that when there is already someone massive doing that? Then, you know, I don't think you should, don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Definitely just do it. Set up a channel, and you don't need to tell anyone like I didn't, or you can tell everyone and get that kind of encouragement and support. But just do it is the first tip. And the second tip is definitely to streamline your process. I think social media will move. So right now, video content is obviously the king, and long and mainly short form, but kind of figure out whether you're going to do all of it, or whether you're going to do one of it, or if you're going to do just static, you know, photo posts, or whatever you're going to do, and then figure out your way of making that consistent. And I hate that phrase consistency, like consistency is key, consistency is the only way to grow, because, you know, it just adds that extra pressure. But it's true, and it's also your only way of holding yourself to it, is to try to find a way to build it into your life. If you are someone that's going to, you know, just sit there for, you know, 3 days in a row, make loads of content, and then put it all out there, and then not do any again for a month, that might work for you, but you know, it can be difficult to sustain that because it's just not a regular part of your life. And so you've got, then those 3 days will come again. You'll say, how am I going to find 3 days to make this much content? You know, it just has to be something that feels kind of, it slots into your life, it's not overwhelming, it doesn't stress you out, and that you've got a streamlined process. But you don't have to have that process from the beginning. And I think that then my third point would be just keep it simple, especially at the beginning. Keep it very simple. If you're going to say, you know, I'm going to make whatever dermatology videos, just make simple. Don't worry about the editing, don't worry about the filming, don't worry about any of that, because you can watch yourself back and fine tune it as you go, but it is worth. People don't really care about that at the start. You just put that content out there, and watch. Yeah, I guess this would be point number 4. Watch people that are in a similar field. Watch all the content creators. Figure out what they're doing. Try not to let it overwhelm you, because I think that's definitely what I felt like. You know, I'd look at someone like Dr. Karen and be like, well, he's got 6 million or however many followers he's got. That, how would I ever reach that? But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because the follower number isn't the goal. And also, you have no idea how much time, energy, money, whatever else other people have put into their channels. And if you're just starting out, of course it's going to take, you know, I remember thinking, because I think I looked back at Dr. Karen's channel once, and it's like, oh, but it looks like he's been creating content for like a year, and it's just he's done all of that in a year. But when he speaks, he's actually been doing it for like 12 years. And so you might not be able to see everything. Someone might have deleted their previous content, or they might have a different channel that you can't see. So don't compare yourself with other creators, but do look to them and see, what are they doing well, what do I like about that, to give you that inspiration of how to do it. But I think simple, you can with health content just sit in a room and just film and not worry about it. The next tip I would say also is just make sure that you take the time. My belief is never to try and get content out too quickly. If you're trying to turn around content in response to a current event or whatever, and you try and turn it around quickly, that will be the content that stings you. And because you will say something not quite in the right way, or maybe not in the most current advice, you might miss something out, you will get called out. People will, and then once you kind of get called out, and then there's a whole rush on there, firstly, it doesn't feel very nice, and secondly, you know, it affects your credibility in the long term. So I think just slow it down. Don't worry about responding to everything as quickly as you can, and just take your time. It doesn't there's a scale, isn't there? Like, to me, taking my time is still like, I would script a video, record it the next day, might edit it the next day. I know there are some people who would spend 2 months per video scripting it, doing the most incredible edits, and that can, Dr. Simi, I think, is a perfect example. She says, I think she takes 2 months per video, and she puts out a lot less videos than other people, and they do so well because they're so well thought through. They've got amazing animations, they've got amazing B-roll footage, everything else is perfect, and that really works for her and her audience, and has really helped her to grow. It doesn't, there isn't, I don't think there's a right way, but I think that the wrong way is to do it too fast without really giving the kind of the script and the evidence the time for you to consider it and put it together in a kind of ordered way that people can follow and that feels accurate.
Yeah, because I think you will be held to the work that you put online, but then also it's okay to be challenged and make mistakes and learn from that experience. It's not going to feel very nice, but don't give up. It's part of the journey.
Yeah, 100%. And I think sometimes those comments are the best ones to respond to, and they give you the best kind of video. Because when someone questions something that you've said, sometimes you could be like, well, actually, that was a 1 minute video, and I didn't have a chance really to fully explain what I meant by that line. And then in hindsight, yeah, that probably saying it in that way was probably not the best way, because you're missing out the kind of whatever would have given it more context. That's completely fine. But yeah, what you don't want is to be giving people the wrong information, and the internet is permanent. You think you can just delete something, but you can't. You can delete it, but it people take screenshots and download videos and whatever else. So, and again, as long as whatever you're doing is generally well considered and in line with what other healthcare professionals would say, that's fine. Don't worry about it if someone downloads it and saves it, even if you later decide you didn't like that video and you deleted it, because at the time it felt true and accurate. It's just if you rush things out, I think that's where you can really make mistakes.
Yeah, I agree because I think sometimes you can try to rush things out if you want to stick to a schedule and you want to grow really fast and you feel the pressure to create, but that's probably the wrong way to go about it. And also, it's something extra that you're doing in your life. You have everything, in your life, so hopefully you're content before you start creating content, and you are giving the other aspects of your life the time and attention that they need, and then content is the extra that you have. And if it takes you 2 months to create a fantastic amazing video, then that's awesome. And if you can create 3 short videos every week, that's also awesome. It's about finding your kind of sweet spot in terms
Yeah.
of creating and balancing everything else in your life. And so, as a final question, what are your kind of goals as a creator over the next, I don't know, few months or the next year or so?
I think, as I've already mentioned, that my goals is not around like follow count or reaching a certain level, and I think that's really important in terms of like my mental health. And it's not my job, and I say all the time, I feel very lucky and grateful that I've been able to, earn an income, earn some money from the content creation side of my life, but it's not my job. And if it all went away tomorrow, that'll be fine. And if I need to take a break because of whatever else goes on in my life, that'll be fine. So I'm actually very grateful that it's not my main thing. And people have asked me in the past, like, is your goal to one day give up medicine? And just absolutely not, never. Like, you can hold me to this, ask me again in 10 years time, if I blew up into something viral, I still don't think that I would ever give up having a day job in medicine, because it gives me all the satisfaction and the kind of the framework for enjoying what I do, and also for the ideas for creating the content. So my goal is not to leave medicine, actually. My goal with it, as I'm returning to work from maternity leave, is to find a way to kind of fit content creation back into my life now, with an extra person in it as well. So again, finding what will be the new balance for me. It will be enough, I think, just finding a way. We met through YouTube, and YouTube is probably the place that I hope to grow an audience over the coming months to years, because I believe that's actually where I have the biggest impact. That's where, especially for all types of content, but particularly for me for pregnancy content, I always find that I'm not quite able to say enough, and I like the idea of like giving things more like an antenatal class or course would do, giving people that nuance behind those discussions. And I find it very hard with short form content. So growing the YouTube platform has probably been my main focus, and TikTok as well, more because I just enjoy it on there. But always my goal is also to keep it within something that's enjoyable, something that feels, not a stress, that feels fun. When it doesn't give me joy, to step away or to do something else.
Brilliant. And do you ever refer any of your colleagues or any of your patients to videos that you've created to kind of, supplement your practice?
I haven't in the past. partly because I never know how it works if we're allowed to, as it's like personal channels. And also, I mean, I didn't probably, because I didn't, before I went on maternity leave, I wasn't really doing any long content on YouTube. I didn't really have anything that I would probably refer people to. I have made videos recently with in mind what I would want what I would want to refer my patients to. Like, for example, what to expect if you're having a laparoscopy, what to expect if you're having a hysteroscopy. Like, I deliberately created those videos with in mind that it would really make the discussion with patients before operations easier if I could say, like, I've actually made a video with all of my top tips for, what you need to know before, what to do to help yourself to heal from these operations and things like that. So maybe in the future, but yeah, not so far.
I appreciate your honesty. I think sometimes it can be difficult to know, is it right to say, oh, follow me on Instagram, or check out my YouTube video.
Oh, sorry, you cut out there. You cut out there. I didn't hear any of that.
Okay, sorry. I'll say again.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start from now.
Yeah.
I appreciate your honesty, and I think there is a bit of a gray area where, can you recommend a certain video that you've created? And I think also we're kind of probably, correct me if I'm wrong, more comfortable with recommending a YouTube video rather than asking people to go to a TikTok or an Instagram or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think it would be good to see like some of the big organizations like the NHS, like each of the individual hospitals or the RCOG having their own content in that regard. And that's why I always say I think like we would be happy to help with those organizations making that kind of content for their pages, but I think that probably to me feels probably a bit better if I was talking to somebody about a laparoscopy to say, and on the RCOG YouTube channel there is a video about what to expect from a laparoscopy. But that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, well, that video doesn't exist, but I have one on my channel. Yeah, I think why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? As long as it adds to the patient care experience. And I agree. I think more trusts, hospitals, and organizations should really consider creating their own video content and putting it on YouTube. It's just easily to, it's so easy to embed the URL even on your website or send the link via AccuRx and all of these other tools that you have, pieces of software. So we are trying to be more, I suppose, digital first, and a video can tell you so much more than a leaflet can, especially visually as well. And having, an actual consultant or the actual doctor that you're going to see deliver that video also helps you build that relationship as well.
Absolutely, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for chatting today, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's really great. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really kind of helped me to reflect back on the journey. So, which I don't do very often. I feel like we're always moving at 100 miles an hour. So, yeah, thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, brilliant. So I hope I'm very impressed, by the way, for the audience that don't know, that your phone has been balanced on a fruit bowl. So how many bananas are we on now?
Yeah, we're still on 3 bananas and 2 nectarines. Massive. And then I was talking about how super professional my setup is, but that setup is in the garden and there's not such good internet out there. So it doesn't really work for podcasts at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for watching or listening, everyone, and we'll see you at the next episode. And be sure to connect with Brooke on all of her channels. I'll leave links to everything in the description below.
Thanks so much, Virginia. Bye.